GTT versus GTR, here we go. I got a DM from a kid or a young person who said to me, hey man, what do you think about all these GTTs running around with GTR badges? I said, I don't know where you see that, but I don't see it much around here. Most people around here are driving actual GTRs, but that's Southern California. So it got me thinking. I looked on the Instagram and started looking around and see that there are quite a few people who are claiming that their cars, or they're labeling their cars as GTRs in their description and all that kind of stuff, but they're actually GTTs. And I know that because I followed a lot of those guys' builds. And I'm like, why are they doing that? Who are they trying to fool? I think some of these guys actually have the whole process documented on their Instagram and they're calling it a GTR. Okay. So I talked to a couple of friends of mine and got their opinion, and they were livid. They were like, what? Why are these people posers? So we're gonna talk about that today. So of course, the Skyline GTR needs no introduction. Most serious car enthusiasts already know this car from either racing in Australia, or perhaps from video games, or from videos from Japan, or magazines, or perhaps a little ridiculous movie called Too Fast, Too Furious. And in recent years, Skyline GTR started to make their way into the United States. First with the R32, then the R33, and shortly the R34 will finally be eligible for importation as the 25-year rule comes into play right now. And so in 2024, the floodgates will open on 1999 R34 Skylines, and demand in the USA will skyrocket. And you can guess what happens with that. GTT prices are sure to go up, and GTR prices that have already been rising are going to go up even more. And so if you want to buy a decent R34 GTR in 2024, be prepared to spend at least $150,000 plus shipping, plus documentation and certification and all that kind of other stuff. So that's going to add another $35,000 to the price of the tag. With prices of R34 GTRs skyrocketing into supercar territory, the notion of converting a GTT into a GTR is motivating many people to give such a project serious consideration, because now at these prices, it's starting to make sense. And after all, in some parts, you can do it even cheaper, because in other countries, you can buy a decent R34 GTT in decent condition for about $35,000 to $50,000 US dollars. And of course, the USA has a 25-year rule, meaning that cars like the Skyline that were never certified for sale in the United States must not be imported until they're 25 years old. And like I just said, in 2024, these 1999 R34s are going to be eligible. So, is it possible to turn into a GTT into a GTR? And if so, at what cost? We're going to find out right after this message. Did you know that the average driver gets 9 traffic tickets in their lifetime? Look, I'll be the first to admit that I've taken maybe a couple of liberties with traffic laws back in the day. And of course, when I got caught, I had to go to court to fight the ticket, which was always a hassle. And each time that I lost my case, it meant big fines, points on my record, and higher insurance premiums. Eventually, I realized that nothing beats having a good attorney argue your case in court. So here's what you do. You download the Off the Record app to your phone and register for an account. And if you get a ticket, simply upload a photo of your ticket into the app, and you will be quickly matched with a lawyer in your jurisdiction. Your lawyer will start working your case right away, and in most cases, you'll never have to set foot in a courtroom. Off the Record has a 97% success rate and a 4.9 star rating on Google. And guess what? They even offer a money-back guarantee if they aren't able to reduce the points or keep that ticket fully off your record. Best of all, I've arranged a 10% discount for all of my YouTube viewers, so download the app and register using the referral code FASTLIFE to receive 10% off your first case. When you compare the base cost of a GTT and the cost of buying all the parts necessary to turn it into a GTR, there are those people who think that they can turn their GTT into a pretty good GTR for less than just buying a real GTR. And mathematically, I suppose it is possible. And while many have tried, many have often run out of money and many have given up. But for the few who have successfully completed such a project and completed into a convincing transformation, I applaud those people. That's fantastic. It's no easy achievement, I get it. But even if every GTR part finds its way into your GTT, it will still never be a GTR. You know why? Because the VIN plate says so. You can't. Well, I'm sure somebody can say, well, I can do this and this and this and change this, and okay, but that's, I'm not talking about committing fraud. This isn't to sound like it's, I'm just going to say it's a fact. You cannot slap an M3 badge on a BMW 335 and sell it as an M3, because it's not, and you know it. Even if you strip all the parts off of an M3 and put them all on your BMW 335, by law, it's still not an M3. Everybody knows that. Nobody should be surprised about this. And I want to say for the record, again, that I admire the people who take a GTT and turn it into a GTR lookalike and then they fool everybody. I know what it takes to do so, and it's a big bloody project and all that kind of stuff. And for those of you who don't know, you got to change some body pieces on the outside of the car, including the rear quarter panel, which is not cheap or easy to do. It's not something you just staple in place. It's easily $10,000 in parts and labor, and if you're a body shop guy, you can probably do it. Those quarter panels are $3,500 to $9,000. Certain interior pieces need to be changed, including the gauge cluster on top of the dash, the steering wheel, the speedometer, odometer, all that stuff, the upper dash gauges, which need to be replaced with the GTR's multi-function display, and just doing the wiring and the harness is a pain in the butt. It can be done, but you better know what you're doing, and it's not cheap to do anyway. Then, of course, is the powertrain. An R34's RB26 and stock 6-speed transmission is running about $25,000 at today's prices, not to mention turning the car into an all-wheel drive specimen and all of those assorted parts that you will need. And there's much more to it as well. You know, you got the brake components, and like I said, some suspension bits and numerous other pieces and so what. So that's going to nickel and dime you. So it adds up. But for the aesthetics, you can get pretty close with the companies like East Bear, who can sell you all of the exterior parts minus the rear quarter panel. And that's about $5,000 right there, which is not a big chunk considering the scope of the project, but it is for a lot of people. But if you have the time and the skill and the money, it can be done. But if you're paying shops to do all the work, it's going to take a very long time and it's going to cost a bunch of money, big bunch of money. Let's look at the math real quick. Figuring about $50,000 for a donor car, $10,000 for the quarter panel and installation, $5,000 for an East Bear body conversion kit, $25,000 for the powertrain, and call it another, I don't know, $10,000 for the all-wheel drive components and suspension bits, brakes, and all that kind of stuff. You're already sitting at $100,000 before the paint and what other stuff that has to be fixed, modified, changed, or put back into roadworthy condition. So you're looking at $110,000 easy, depending on who is doing the work and the labor for that. If you're going to do that for the couple of years, you're going to be spending about $40,000 or $50,000. But it's still cheaper than buying a legitimate GTR, I suppose, right now. But again, it's still not a true GTR, and I'm totally okay with that. What people are talking about, this GTT versus GTR discussion, you know, you have to understand a conversion project like this is truly worthy of respect and admiration. It's the ultimate tribute to the excellence of the GTR. And these owners, in my opinion, should be super proud of that accomplishment. Why sully it by taking the GTD badges, sticking on a GTR badge? This is where people have the problem. We see these people sometimes at car shows. Teenagers might not know the difference, but we do. We can tell an R34 GTR from a fake R34 GTR just by looking at the top of the dash. No MFD, we know that you're bull. And we just turn around and walked away. We don't even waste our time. And the other dead giveaway is if they don't open the hood so you can see the engine, because we're going to know right away that's not an RB26. And people who put GTR badges on their GTTs and hope that no one will ask them to pop the hood or look inside the car, honestly, I think that's low-key posing. And while it might be disingenuous, it's just a colossal disappointment. And then I don't even want to talk to those persons, and I just walk away because I know they're full of shit. How many of us have slammed people for putting an AMG badge on a non-AMG Mercedes or an M badge on a non-M car? We've all done it, right? We've all slammed these people publicly and on social media and back in the forums. Hell, even BMW has taken flack for putting M Sport badges on non-M cars. And BMW came up with this thing called M Sport, which basically denotes an accessory package. Not really any performance stuff. It's just not about that. It makes it look more like the BMW M. And it's kind of like putting like a woman stuffing her bra. It's false advertising. And BMW has been taking heat for it for a long time. People like me and many, many others can really appreciate the hard work that goes into transforming something that can pass as a GTR. And that's cool for a lot of people. But when they start claiming on their social media pages that their cars are actually GTRs and they use their name as some GTR, that's when some people really raise their eyebrows and they just go, well, what the and they just move on. Some people think that's actually willful deception, and frankly, it detracts from the achievement of building a great GTR replica. So those owners who are, naming their car, you're putting that stuff on your social media and saying it's a GTR are really doing themselves a disservice. If they want to do that, that's their business, of course. But I'm gonna tell you another story from my younger days. I lived in a place called Santa Clarita. It's north of Los Angeles, small town, 50,000 people. Most of the people were into muscle cars, and so I was not. I was into JDM cars, and they were all all the muscle cars. And this one guy, David Sylvester, had a really nice 69 yellow and white Mustang Fastback, and he was telling everybody it was a Paxton Supercharge, and it made it really odd, or I don't want to use the word odd, ridiculous, because the guy had a heavy lisp, and back in those days there was no sensitivity for about speech impediments and all that kind of stuff. So he would go around, and every time I'd stand next to him, he was talking about his car. It's got a 351 Windsor engine with a Paxton Supercharger. And I just have to walk away because number one, I knew it wasn't a Paxton, or not a supercharger at all, because I'd seen out of the hood, and there's no the whine from a supercharger, which not very big whine with the Paxton, but I knew it wasn't supercharged. But everybody believed him, and then when he finally got outed, he basically left. He just disappeared. Never saw him again. Basically, his reputation was ruined, and he was labeled a bullshit. He had no credence or credibility in that town, and it was time for him to move on his next horse. So don't be that guy. You're better than that. But there's something else. Why would you even try to build a GTR from a GTT when you can build yourself a badass GTT for far less money, trying to be something that's not? Why don't you spend the money on a proper build for your RB25 DET, or even go with the more updated RB25 DET Neo engine, which the one that was released for the R34 in 1998. There were a few changes with that engine, such as solid lifters instead of hydraulic, revised camshaft, which featured on and off solenoid variable VCT, which you still see today. Changed the thermostat on it. They had specific coil packs, if I'm not mistaken. They revised the intake manifold, which basically intentionally reduced the runner diameter from 50 to 45 millimeter, therefore increasing the air velocity, basically, which provided a little more low-end torque, which is a helpful thing. The combustion chamber of the Neo head is a little bit smaller, and it has GTR spec connecting rods, as well as new pistons, which provided a compression ratio of 9:1, which helps give a little more torque and power. These motors are totally capable of making about 600 horsepower with the stock bottom end, and properly built, you can turn your GTT into a burnout machine or a drift machine, and it would be a great project. It would be reliable. It'd make all the power you want. I think Adam LZ did this, back in 2019, and he ran that for a while. And so did this guy. He's got a modest looking GTT. The guy doesn't look like he's highballer, right? Looks like an average guy, just like you and me, right? And he's having fun. He probably just spends money for tires and gas for the whole weekend, and he's not trashing his car. So I think that would be a great project to do. So you could build a bulletproof RB25 DET for about 15,000 bucks, assuming that your current RB25 is still running and nothing is broken. That would be a great project right out of the box. If you're considering buying an R34 GTT or an R34 GTR, give Sean Morris a call at Top Rank Importers, or go to their website at www.importervehicle.com. That's it for this episode. Don't forget to like, don't forget to turn on notifications, and we'll see you next time.